All right. In the next set of video lectures I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be teeing off the cardiovascular system with this particular topic of blood, and then working my way into the anatomy and physiology of the heart, and then blood flow and vessel dynamics. So the cardiovascular system is going to be a topic of concentration for me for the next few weeks. Basically, in this part, in this set of videos, I'm going to be covering blood. I just want to give a basic overview of blood, just kind of what it is and its basic functions of the body, and then start getting more. And then what I'll do is I'll start to break blood down into specific categories and talk about the separate components or parts of it, starting with the plasma, and then essentially talking about the various cells of blood and then the roles that they play, in our well-being and in blood as well. So that's kind of how these are going to go. So this first part's going to be on the overview of blood and the functions of blood. All right. So basically, blood. Remember from your basic histology that blood is a connective tissue, and that. Remember, by definition, connective tissues are essentially, cells and gels, right? So basically, cells that are, that either synthesize or are immersed in an environment that have a lot of extracellular proteins. Okay, and when those proteins mix with water, you form a gel, not quite a solid, not quite a liquid. Okay, so blood is a fluid. Blood is I should say, more of a gel-like connective tissue. It is, it does have some fluid dynamics to it, but you have to remember that blood is 5 times more viscous or thick than H2O or water. Okay, so keep that in mind, that blood is more thick than water because of its connective tissue nature. All right, and we'll talk more specifically about these plasma proteins later on. But bear in mind, blood is a connective tissue. Okay, and we can break blood down into 2 main parts. The first main part would be the plasma, or essentially, which is essentially the water, and then the dissolved non-cellular components of blood, okay, such as the nutrients like glucose or amino acids or fats or electrolytes and so on. Okay, so plasma is the water aspect of blood, and then what we have next is, so this would be the first part, this would be the second part, would be the formed elements of blood. Okay, and the formed elements, think of the formed elements as the cells of blood. Okay, the cellular composition of blood. So the plasma is essentially the water and the non-living, the non-cellular components, and then the formed elements are the actual cells that you find circulating in blood. Okay, and bear in mind that peripheral blood is about 55% plasma and about 45%, I'm just going to abbreviate this, formed elements. Okay. All right, so blood is primarily composed of plasma with a lot of cells mixed in there as well. All right, and then erythrocytes. Remember, erythro, Greek for red, cyto, cell, are your red blood cells, or the abbreviation would be RBCs. And then your leukocytes are your white blood cells, or WBCs, and then you've got your platelets, otherwise known as thrombocytes. Remember, thrombo means clot, so that should already tell you what platelets are designed to do. They help us form clots. Okay, and I'll talk about, again, I'll make videos that are more specific to the functions of these cell types. But for now, you just need to understand that blood can be broken down into 2 major components, plasma and formed elements. Then you need to know a little more about each of these. All right, and then the composition of blood is what allows blood to do its job. Okay, and I would definitely say that its number one responsibility is for transport. Okay, blood is blood is a transport medium. Okay, for wastes, gases, and nutrients. Okay, blood is a transport medium for waste, gases, and nutrients. Okay. Um, so remember, the nice thing about blood is, being that it is primarily water, is that a lot of, we have a lot of substances in the body that can mix in water. All right, like, hormones that are made out of proteins or electrolytes and so on. All right, so basically we can just transport them, we can just, transport those right into the bloodstream. The heart will pump the blood all over the body, and then those substances will travel over long distances and get to their destinations. All right, and the nice thing about, how well the blood is acclimated for transport is, that there are also substances in the body that are non-polar or non-charged that cannot mix in water. Okay, like steroid hormones. Or, we do have lipids in the bloodstream, and we do need to circulate them around. And we get around that by having proteins dissolved in the plasma, or plasma proteins that act as carrier proteins, okay, which is nice. All right, so blood is very well designed for the purpose of transport. All right, and as I just mentioned, blood is transporting gases, nutrients, and waste, and heat as well. For example, blood does play a very pivotal role in thermal regulation. Whenever we get hot, we circulate blood to the skin. Sweat glands basically extrapolate plasma or water from the blood, secrete that water onto our skin, and then when that water evaporates or falls off our skin, it takes the heat with it. But you have to be careful with that, because then that can also dehydrate you. Okay, so the number one function of blood is transport. Okay, and here's all the stuff that blood is transporting. Blood is also a very protective mechanism. Okay, and basically the protection aspect, it's not always all about immunity. Okay, that's where the white blood cells and the antibodies come in. Okay, white blood cells are essentially the immune system. All right, they are the defense mechanisms against foreign invaders or foreign cells that we may produce in our body. And same thing with antibodies. These are tags that are produced by white blood cells that make us more effective at fighting off illnesses and allow the immune response to be carried out. All right, and then platelets are for hemostasis. Hemostasis essentially is about controlling, blood flow, controlling blood. Okay, and basically one thing you have to remember about the circulatory system is a closed system. Okay, the circulatory system is a closed system. What I mean by that is that blood does not leave. Blood does not leave the circulatory system. It's not supposed to, unless we need it to. For example, through sweating. Okay, but even when we're exchanging nutrients, between capillaries and tissues, the fluids that are pumped into the tissues are pumped back into the bloodstream. Okay, so basically this is a closed system. And if we ever have a break in the system, basically if we ever have a break in the plumbing, then we have to fix that break, okay? And then that's where platelets come in by forming a clot. And that clot protects us from excessive blood loss, which will kill us because we'll be unable to circulate gases and nutrients and waste to the proper areas of the body, okay? And regulation, blood plays a very important role in regulation, as we mentioned earlier. The thermal regulatory aspects of blood, the regulation in pH. There's a lot of buffers that are found in blood that allow us to compensate for changes in pH, and so on, plus fluid levels. So basically, blood circulating around the body through different mechanisms between the brain and the kidneys by monitoring blood pressure and blood composition levels, osmolarity to be specific, allow us to monitor fluid levels as well. But again, the number one function, should make that look like a number one. The number one function is transport, okay? And then when it comes to overall blood volume, okay, blood volume is going to vary depending on a couple of factors, age, body size, gender. Okay, but overall, overall, the average human has about 4 to 6 liters of blood in their system, peripheral blood. Okay, 4 to 6 liters, and the biggest contributing factor, I would definitely say, would be body size. Okay, it would definitely be body size. Okay, I mean, the bigger the body, the more the blood. Smaller the body, the less the blood. Okay, but there are factors that can allow us to change the amount of blood that are found within us. For example, if you move to higher altitude, that's going to change the properties of your blood. Okay, if you exercise, that's going to affect your blood volume. All right. If you have, then obviously there are certain pathologies that revolve around blood volumes as well that I'll talk about in a little while. Okay. So the average human has about 4 to 6 liters of blood in their system. And then we've already talked about this, plasma, and then, within this 4 to 6 liters, blood has 2 major components, cells and, the formed elements, which are the cells of blood, and then the plasma. Platelets technically aren't cells, but they come from cells. So, and then basically, if you want to, now, in lab, this is something everybody does in lab. If you want to separate, you can easily separate these components of blood. You just draw a little bit of blood, you put it in a tube, and then you spin it in the centrifuge. And then once it's done spinning, what you'll notice then is you'll notice that out of all that fluid, you'll notice it's going to look really, really thick on the bottom. You'll see this kind of you'll see a little border of, it's going to be kind of like a grayish looking color. And then the rest of the way, you're going to see primarily like a liquid. Okay, so essentially what we have here on the bottom, those would be the formed elements, because cells are going to be heavier than water. The cells are going to rest, and on the bottom of the of the tube, and then up here we would have the my board's going nuts on me. We would have the plasma. Well, what the heck? Gotta be kidding me. Sorry about that, folks. Having some technical difficulties. There we are. Am I back? All right, good. The board stopped going nuts. All right, my apologies on that, folks. So again, we've got the plasma. Okay, we've got the plasma here, and which is the water, and then here basically what these would essentially be the clotting proteins or clotting factors of the blood. And then basically, if you were to remove this and separate this, then what you would have here is what you have up top. This up here, that would essentially be your what you would call serum. All right. So now what I want to do is after this, now let's get into the specific topic of plasma, and then go from there.